I'm just gonna. Oh. Hey, how are you? How are you? Are you piece of shit? Yeah. No, I don't make home. That's good.
Awesome. We're ready, Joe.
All right, it is 4:31. And I'll go ahead and call this budget workshop to order. First, we'll start with roll call. Supervisor Lucas. Here. Supervisor Brittany.
Here.
Supervisor Julie.
Here.
Supervisor Joe.
Phillips.
Yep, sorry, first names. And Supervisor Dan is here. We have a full board. Next, we will start with audience comments. We have a 3-minute limit and ask that it be related to the context of this budget workshop. Go ahead and open the floor. Aaron on Zoom. Okay, not hearing any comments. We will go ahead and move on to the discussion of fiscal year 2026 preliminary budget. Just start with a real quick reminder. This is to set the preliminary budget that cannot be exceeded. The final budget that we do approve could be lower than this. So anything that we think we might need to be including in the budget needs to be accounted for tonight. And then we have until, I'll say July or August to finalize everything, which would, hopefully be able to claw back some of that, answer any other unanswered questions and have a final budget that we then roll into next year with. We're not gonna, we unfortunately, we're a little short on lapel mics, so, yeah.
Also, you have an opportunity to lower your budget after today between now and your final. You just obviously cannot go up, but we can put it on the agenda on June, July, and August, and you can make changes up until your August meeting. But when you leave today, you just won't be able to go higher.
Yes.
Leave over.
All right. Okay, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, Angel, or?
Sure. I'm Angel Montagna. I'm Vice President of Infomart, the Registered Services. I used to be the district manager here for probably about 3-4 years, something like that. Good to see everyone. New face.
Hello, Brittany.
Brittany. Julie, I met you. Nice to see the rest of you. So I'll be walking through this. If you have any questions based off of what Joseph presents, I'll be happy to answer any of those questions and kind of walk through it with everyone. And I can make changes in real time to be able to come up with what you all want to change.
Okay, so real quick, we do have one person dialed into Zoom. Karen, are you able to hear the conversation we just had? Make sure it's recording everything.
Yes, I can.
Excellent. Okay, we can hear you. The only other thing I could think of, do you think you might be able to dial into the Zoom meeting from that laptop? So that way we could have, if we can't, then that's fine.
If I can, I'm just concerned that there's going to be feedback because I'm in the same room.
Oh, okay. Well, it could be just video. Doesn't have to be with audio, but okay. But if it's easier, then all right, well, let's go ahead and start. You can do the introduction, go through whatever changes we have, and then if we need to start making whatever changes, then maybe that'll be a good time to connect.
Sure. So.
Do you have a mic picking you up down there?
Yeah.
We might have to. We can move the house mic, closer to you guys down there. We got
Julie's opting up to give me.
Okay.
And everyone hear me?
Not yet.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
So as we go through this budget, the only increase on any specific line item that I might have anticipated, and I believe I explained this to the board the last meeting, was a line item for security services. Shouldn't we here? I allocated just, given the information I was given, proposals that potentially will cross, our budget. I forecasted about 100,000 just to play safe. Of course, if that number changes or is lower, you can lower it at any given time. But based off of your review of what you see before, is there any questions?
So at the last meeting, did you all go line by line?
Sort of, we went based on we had the February actuals at the time, so that was kind of our best reference that we went through. Yeah,
That's fine. So based off of what all was discussed at that meeting and then the changes that you just put in, which $100,000 for your security system, I don't know if that's far off or we're kind of in line with proposals that you all received and what you're going to decide on. That number we can obviously change, but as the budget as it is right now, we're at 13.2% as an increase. Is that, what's the tolerance level as far as, have y'all discussed where you want it to be as far as an increase to your actual, the homeowners, or are we wanting to go a little bit lower? Do we need to back stuff out? Are you dead set on a percentage, or you're just going off of a real proposed budget?
I'll go ahead and start. I mean, my thought, traditionally, we've tried to, if we have to have any increase, to try and peg it to like an inflationary number. So something that is at least in line with what the bigger economic picture is for our residents. Now, if we're talking about adding something that has been I'll call it a hole in the budget for security services, again, if that is something we end up deciding on, then that's the story that we would have to then tell the residents of why it'd be going up by that potentially larger amount. Again, the preference would be to, and maybe as a fallback from, if it's maybe not the O&M going up by that inflationary number, then yes, it's not applicable to every resident, but once we factor in the bond payments, which that's maybe a side discussion, but assuming that were to stay the same for most residents, then when that's factored in, what would say a 3% accounting for that bond payment, maybe that ends up being like a 6 or 7 or 8% on the O&M side to get that 3 or 4% overall. I don't know what that might look like.
So, okay.
Going much higher than that, I would be a lot more hesitant personally. And again, I'm just one of the 5 of us to discuss and figure out if this is something we can make accommodations for, what we want to maybe squeeze from somewhere else.
Okay,
Reason.
so looking at this, like I said, it's 13.2 if you're leaving $100,000 in that security line, and that's your biggest driver, right? So if you do that, it's 13.2 for the O&M, but the overall is going to be 7.1, which is inclusive of your debt. Your debt doesn't change. You're not redoing any bonds, nothing like that. You're not adding, that window is actually closed to
Right.
do the bonds.
Right.
When it was presented months ago.
And we refinance.
Yeah, let's put a pin in that
Table
and
that.
discuss that real quick, because we did at our meeting 2 months ago approve going forward with, I believe, FMS. I don't know if Joseph, if you want to, and I know it involved council who they said that I think they might have been able to dial in. I don't know if I know they're in the process of driving here and they're going to be here for the regular meeting starting at 6. But to summarize, external factors in the bond market in the last 2 months have kind of torpedoed the proposed refinance that we would have been able to do and we're hoping to do. I know that they had been evaluating possibly some other private type of options, but I mean, if we're needing to set the limit right now, there's nothing we can include from that.
No, there's not. The rate you have currently is really, really good, which is the reason we were able to refi a few years ago. When I was here. But that rate doesn't exist, so it doesn't make financial sense now because you're not gonna get that good of a rate and it's not really gonna save you. But there are other options that maybe we can look into, but for this intent purpose, we wouldn't be able to include anything like that.
So
So
can we,
you're looking at a 7.1 overall. But if you take out that 100,000, let's say y'all decide not to do any security, you're just gonna kind
where's
of.
that line item
hold
now?
off.
Where's the,
You're talking a 5.1 overall and a 9.5. They owe it in. Just with taking that $100,000 out,
Say that number again, I'm sorry.
9.5
9.5.
in O and M and
Mhm.
5.1 overall, once you include everybody's bond debt.
Okay, so, so a couple questions. So
Sure.
I know that the landscaping, that is a contracted, amount that grows a certain, predictable amount each year. If we've taken out that large line item that we added, what, I see there's a 260% over budget for over budget for
Roads and
roads and alleyways. What drivers do we have that kind of have 9% as our baseline for O and M increase?
I'm sorry, one more time.
You said that if we were to take out the security line item completely, that we would be at a 5% overall, 9% O and M increase.
Yeah.
Right, so I was just asking
What
for,
are these?
yes,
Absolutely. So, we'll just start at the top. If you start under administration. It looks like the drivers there, which aren't really drivers, but some increases. You've got professional engineering going from 70 to 75. You've got legal services going from 60 to 75. Your 3% management increase going from 73,468 to 75. You've got. Some actually went down a little bit. Insurance went up a little bit from 27 to 29.7. So your administration went from basically 345 to 373. Then you've got the field component, which is something you all need to discuss. That number is in there with a couple of different options, so that's something you need to discuss. I believe that's like 10%, which could definitely come down if you all decide you don't want to add staff or anything like that. Your mulch looks like that stayed the same. Your landscape went up, I'm assuming they're 3% without doing the math there, from 746 to 768. All of those pretty much stayed the same. So basically your landscape services went from 957 to 980. And then your utilities went from 402 to 428. Roads and alleyways went from 2,000 to 10,000. Parks and facilities went from 45 to 55.
But is there anywhere to see what, are those just baseline percentages that were added to make them increase, or what is the?
No, so are you talking about what goes into coming up with these numbers?
Yeah.
Okay, so what goes into that is obviously the trend of spending, how you all have ended over the last years, like have we consistently been overspending in these areas? And to Dan's point earlier, maybe we did know we were overspending in those areas, but the board decided, you know what, let's just leave that there because we don't want to incur a big increase for the residents, or there could be a million reasons why the board decided not to increase that at that particular time. And so some of these contract stuff, there's escalations built into most of your contracts, if not all of them. And then the other is just a trend of spending. There could be a cost of material increase. Again, this is the district's budget. I know a couple of you are new for the budget process, but at the end of the day, what we do to put numbers in here is we research everything, the trend of spending, how we ended over the last, I usually go back about 3 years and see where we've historically overspent. And then my position would be to bring that to you, and then you as a board get to discuss and decide, because at the end of the day, this is your budget.
Right.
It's what you decide to do. So we can change line items. We can, only say, you know what? I know we've got X amount to do, but this year we're only gonna do $5 of that, and then we work within that budget.
I'm just a little bit confused. The variance of the budget, a lot of them are zero. So I imagined that the way we come up with these is by following the trends, but a lot of these are actually, and what like made me look at it was a 0% variance, which is really weird. They're just,
What you're looking at is a zero, but what I'm looking at, so I think what it was is when that was sent out to you all, the projections, which you see over to the right, you probably don't see it on your PDF, that there's actually a projections bucket that you can click budget or actuals. And so they all appear on your end to be clicked as budget, which is showing that 0%. But let's say if you look at R&M pools, right, there's 60,000 budgeted. If I change that and put it to actuals, y'all have already spent 24,026 what they're projecting. And again, these projections really aren't necessarily concrete, because the way that they provide projections is they take what you're spending today, right? And if you keep on that current path of spending, they're gonna say you're gonna spend that same amount every month and you're gonna be over or under. So projections aren't really the way to look at how to do a budget.
I understand that, but for example, this line item here that says auditing services, $5,000 was what was on the budget. Actuals have been none.
Because you haven't paid for your annual audit yet. That is a
Okay.
contract. You sign an engagement letter. At
Okay.
the beginning of the year typically, and.
So that's just done once a year and we just haven't done that yet.
That's right.
Okay, perfect. And
Yeah.
then, so then, for example, like this other one, legal advertising, it says 1,200, we've spent 225. And then we're projected to spend another 975, which just happens to equal the exact budget. So there's no variance. Is there something that's set there yearly?
Yes,
That's
so what happens is, you budget 1,200, and what we typically, you've got your annual meeting schedule, right, that we advertise. Any special meetings you have, your budget hearing, we have to advertise because it's an actual hearing. And any other meetings that you may have outside of your regular annual meeting. So what we try to do is save the district money and do all of your meetings at one time. Advertise those, because we have to advertise. So instead of advertising each one, it's projected here that by the end of September, you're gonna spend $975 in legal advertising. You may not even spend that because you may not have any extra meetings, you may not have any.
Well, that's kind of my exact point, that it seems like these numbers, there is no trend then, because the numbers just are the actuals minus what the budget is. So
That's actually not correct. So the trend, this budget workbook that you're looking at, that's not gonna show you any sort of trend. That's based off of the numbers that are input into this.
Yeah.
What you look at as your trend is how you ended. Your fiscal year goes from October 1 to September 30th.
mhm,
Okay, it's not a calendar year.
right,
So what you look at for trend of spending is previous years, October through September 30th. Your financials are completed and sent over to auditors and everything on September 30th. Most of the time, they're actually closed out probably October and November in case there's some extra stuff that comes in. And that's what you look at for a trend of spending, not this workbook. All this gives you is projections of what you've kind of done for the year. But again, some of these projections like auditing, that's a one-time fee a year. So you can't project that out, because all this is gonna show you is over 12 months. If you spend X, you're gonna get X. That doesn't necessarily mean that's what you're gonna get.
yeah, but what I think my point is, I understand everything that you're saying, but what I'm trying to say is that last time we had this meeting, I think the actuals were missing, it was a whole thing. The next one was canceled, and now here we are today again, and it seems like there was just like base level math done, because all the variances show that it's just whatever we've spent minus what the current budget is, that's what projected expense. So I'm just failing to see where the trends reflect these numbers.
Okay, so I'm gonna try it again. So what you're looking at, there is a projection box that I can click to either set these numbers to budget, which is what you're seeing and what you're talking about, or I can go through and set them to actuals. Okay, they're all set to budget. So you're not seeing any sort of trend by looking at this. What you need to be looking at is your financials, right? Every month when your financials are in your agenda, you look, it tells you what was currently budgeted and then what has been spent and what's projected out to be. So again, I don't know if I'm answering your question
No.
correctly. Okay,
No.
I don't,
No, yeah, we're definitely not, the 0% variance in the budget suggests that exactly what we've spent is,
that's not set, is what I'm trying to tell
I
you.
understand it's not
Yeah,
set, but I'm just saying,
don't look at that.
well, this is what we were going off of,
Right,
right? So
yeah.
the way I did my projections was going back 2 years and looking at those myself because
Yeah.
it should have, I think, at this point, that variance should have reflected there. And it should have taken to account the patterns till now. And
Yeah.
it just doesn't, because then I'm not a financial expert, I'm not an accountant, and here I am like pulling old documents and whatnot, and I feel like it's the management company's responsibility to guide us and give us that information so that we can make those decisions. But these, all this, I mean, guys, you've seen a budget before, like all these zeros indicate that we're just magically supposed to hit every single budget that's left, whether we're over or under right now. That doesn't,
No, because people typically will read their financials when you have them in your agenda. That's what they're in there for. And I understand exactly what you're saying, but, and what we could have done, what probably should have been done to help someone who's new to this process is to click all of those to be actual, so you're not seeing zeros, right? So for example, if you look at insurance liability, don't look at that one, that's a one-time payment. Look at, legal advertising, okay? It's budgeted for 1,200, your actuals through March are 225, you're projected to spend another 229, which your total will be 454. It actually shows a negative 62.19% because you were that much under budget, right? That's set to actuals, that's why you're not seeing that. And that's what he probably should have clicked that button before he put it into the agenda for you all to
but
see.
that wouldn't be doing anything different other than just multiplying by 2 what we've already spent. It's still not analyzing the patterns, is what I'm
It is
saying.
analyzing the patterns. You can only do within the fiscal year on a budget. I can't give you an analyzation of the last decade. Like
No, not
that's
the last decade.
necessarily how it works.
Right.
If the board wants to see, we can absolutely change this format. If the board wanted to see fiscal year, 23, 24, and 25, we can absolutely do that, but that's not how it's been set up in this district currently.
Well, whether it was set up in the district that way or not, I think the point is that the board is supposed to receive certain information from the management company, certain guidances, and then we are supposed to go off of that. And this is nothing. There's no data. There's nothing. There's no
Okay.
data. So it's, how are we supposed to make projections when we don't have the data to go off of? Is my point.
Okay, well, I will jump in with maybe a way to go forward. So I understand there's there's a nuance with how is this, like right now it's showing, I like you said, most of these are kind of pegged to meet their budgeted number for the year
Right.
before. If it's something like there, a lot of them are truly fixed costs, like,
Right.
board of supervisors, some of them truly are.
Right.
But there are some other ones that I think what would be our better use of our time is to focus on the bigger things that would have more of an impact on what we set as our ceiling for the budget for the year. I'm not trying to shut down any of the discussion of actuals versus what is projected by Infomark versus what's shown on here.
Mhm.
I want to make sure that we are looking at the biggest line items that, depending on how it plays out of what we actually do spend, whether it shows we've actually spent 0 or 100 or whatever so far, what could have the most variance? So what I see is we have the sidewalks That one, and I lost it on here, we had
Like
spent.
another 80,000.
Right, well, and I know we have bids out,
Yeah.
so that's a large increase, and I mean, that's something I believe that we just have to suck it up and do.
Mhm.
And this is a perennial favorite, little plant joke there, invasive plant maintenance. We have 105,000 budgeted, and yes, there's gonna be, and one other point is there's a seasonal variance with a lot of these, there's not gonna be as much maybe pool maintenance in, the winter months and, the first few months of the fiscal year, which unfortunately is what we're gonna be shown here for actuals. But what, can you tell us what it looks like for the invasive plant maintenance? When we had 105,000 set into our existing budget, that money's already been collected and set aside for that.
So you remember, Dan, to Lucas, you may have been on the board, Joe, you may have been as well, Teresa, still the chairman. And you hired, aquatic,
Not biotech.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, it was aquatic weed management or aquatic weed
Yeah.
control.
Okay.
And because we needed to knock out all of those invasives that Teresa had brought forward with the report from Swift Mud. So that's what that original 105 was.
Right.
I don't know if, where it's at today. I know Catherine Bowman goes out every now and then and does kind of like an inspection. I don't know if she's brought any information to the board that needs. Okay, so I think that essentially, y'all haven't spent any money out of that because that money had been left in there in case you needed to do that project again.
Right.
Right.
So Catherine would be the one to tell you, hey, it's that time again, or what have you. The last one we did was, I think, about 94,000-ish, something like that. So again, that's a number that you can either leave it in there, or maybe get some information from Catherine Bowman. As David said, she'll probably be coming to report something here pretty soon. Maybe we reach out to her and ask her, what does that look like? Do we need to keep money in there for that? I mean, that's a big chunk that you could do something else.
Right. In 2023, we budgeted 54,800. And then in 2024, we adopted, that's when we upped it to 105,000.
Did that show, and maybe for, future, showing, yes, actually what we spent this year is helpful, but if we had like the full fiscal year of what we spent, I think when we've done these budgets in the past, we've had like what the actuals were for the year prior. So there's not any speculation of, well, is it a seasonal variance? Is it well, we just haven't had a lot of demand for this line item versus we have that information, and it would be very helpful for this process to have what the actuals ended up really being on September 30th, 24.
Yeah, so September 30th of 24 were see, there you go. You ended at $5,050.
Right.
And again, I think because you didn't decide to do that project, we did it the one time prior. And I believe at the time, if I remember correctly, the board decided just to leave that money in there in case you needed to do future treatments.
At the end of the year, when we didn't spend it, it just went into the reserves.
Yeah, it just stays, or it absorbs other overages that you might have went
Yeah.
over in other lines, it just absorbs
Because
that.
we know it's coming again, so I guess that's why we keep putting it in.
I would venture to say it is coming again, because you have to have so much percentage versus whatever in there, but I can't definitively speak because Catherine would be the one
Right.
to
Yeah.
give that.
Now, fortunate that you're here, David, and good to see you. It's been a while. Do you happen to know when our most recent report from the
Definitely.
consultant?
She represents the big claim to software. I think it was a big bump up last year. But she did reach out to us recently with that out of the infrastructure staff and get some information so she can file it or report the software. And I don't think I can come back next week and say if there's been a extensive problem or if it's under control.
Okay,
In 23, Dan, you spent $54,800.
Right.
So it went from 54,800 significantly down, right? Which I would assume that 5,000 was basically chemicals that, Brad probably had to purchase to go out and do his normal spraying. Because remember, you've got the company who came in and did the massive thing, and then Brad still does it year round to kind of keep on top of it.
Right.
So, I would assume that it's probably gonna be time pretty quick to have another mass thing in there. Again, I don't know if 105 is that magic number or not. But again, whatever you budget, that's what the board can determine. Okay, we've set a budget of whether it's $20 or 100,000. You would have them do whatever you all.
You know, I think when we do a budget, almost easier if we didn't do all the line items. Because if, let's say, roads and alleyways comes in under, but then maybe the pool comes over. So we like to have a budget of operations and, of,
Operation
maintenance.
maintenance.
And, but regardless of what we set the budget, when things come up, we have to take care of them anyway. So it's kind of,
Lots of obligations for sure. At the end of the day, if you look at it, you parse out those lines and those can be changed. I mean,
Right.
this has been in place for probably over a decade or so. And, you know, I think a few people over the years have said, hey, can we add this line in or take away this line or something, or consolidate some lines? You can absolutely do that as a board. This isn't
well,
set in
it
stone.
helps us see
Yeah,
where the big number comes from.
yeah.
But I don't know that we need to set a budget for each line. I guess that's what
Yeah.
I'm saying.
And
Right,
you can
right.
do that. At the end of the day, it's one bucket of money, right?
Right.
Everything comes out of that one bucket, and then you have your separate reserve account that
Right.
things come out of that.
And then the other thing is for future budgets, really be nice to put an asterisk next to our discretionary spending, because we don't have a lot of discretionary spending. I mean, a lot of it,
can do that.
we don't have any choice, you know, on the
Yeah,
amount.
absolutely.
And then, so there's no point in us spending time discussing the things we don't have a choice about. Because we have to spend that, and then we can just discuss the things where we have options.
So you're saying put an asterisk by like all of your contract, like fixed costs?
Right,
Sure.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, that would help me, because when I was going through it, I'm there, well, now should we raise that or lower that? And I'm, well, I don't know, it's, you know, and that would help.
And if you think about it, you only had very minimal contracts. The rest, because you do have on-site staff, is basically a budget that you set or what your expectations are for your community. So we can absolutely do that, is put
Yeah.
asterisks by your fixed cost asset.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, we have to do the invasive plant species, work.
Yeah.
So that gets tricky because it's like, well, how much is it gonna cost? And, but our reserve has grown a little bit because
It
we didn't
has.
use it for a couple of years, so, yeah.
That's good.
And
David
the
has-
other one that's really high here was the water. Yeah. Huge increase in the water.
Out here, ever since I can remember, there's always been water concerns like Toho, and they actually refunded you, I think it was it 24 Dan or 23? Like 20-something $1,000 because there was a leak that
recent.
Toho wasn't aware of. So I know your Landscape United and Infomark both kind of keep a look at that, and then we reach out to Toho.
But there were a couple of bills this year that,
We're pretty high.
I would like to have you reach out to Toho. And, I think, I've sent the information to Joseph and he's gonna
Perfect.
look into it, because
Yeah,
the 1 month our bill was 3,000, then it was 15, and then dropped back to 2.
yeah.
So there's one, there
there's a
was one of the
problem.
breakage, but
Yeah.
that, I don't understand how anybody could, how much water could flow at cost $15,000. You know, it's hard for me to even wrap my head around.
Yeah,
It's-
Toho, I will say, has been really good
Yeah.
about providing refunds back if they've noticed that there's an issue.
So why is it going up that high, that much though?
On the water,
Yeah,
get there,
we're going from 220 to,
Yeah, I don't,
25. So $5,000.
I don't understand the
how much-
projected. I mean, maybe that's, but we're getting past, I guess,
Oh,
going to,
you know,
Yeah.
I take that
Because the
back.
way that this works, the way this particular workbook works, is they take what you're currently spending, and if you keep on that spending, they blow it out of the road funds.
And if it's irrigation, we're coming into the rainy season, so you can't just extrapolate what we spent through the dry season for
That's
the rainy
right.
season. So that's why the yes, the projected goes up a lot, but what's actually budgeted only goes up like two
Yeah,
twenty to
you know, I
225.
looked at that wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So-
saw the 305.
Yeah.
But that's just my point is I was under the impression that we would have numbers reflected on those trends. If we know that rainy season coming up, we're not gonna spend as much as water in the second half of the year. You would think that that would reflect.
So the previous total year spend would have been more informative than just a simple extrapolation of what we spent through the first 6, 7 months, whatever it's been in the year.
Right, and that's all this budget ever shows. It has been for this way for years, not to say that it's right, wrong. You all can tell how you want it. You wanted multiple years in there of actuals, like if you wanted your September 30th ending year financials of 24, 23, we can put all of that in there. That's not an issue whatsoever.
Well, actually, I remember Lucas had made a chart of various expenses through the years when he was comparing something. And I actually had done that also, but I didn't bring it with me to compare the different costs at the end of each fiscal year.
So September 30th of 24, Dan, in your water and sewer, y'all ended at $170,651. So it was actually 41,000 under what you budgeted of 211,660.
So
You know,
I think the budget or projected is pretty conservative. I think it's giving us some fluff. I think we probably might run light, just based on what I'm looking at, and how everything is extrapolated. So we could be running a little light, and then could we touch base on the annual budget for 26 and the rate of change, what the rate is again, and then how the
Before that, real quick, I know David was trying to get a word in maybe 5 minutes ago. Was it, did we discuss it? Is there something that we need to?
It's a big part, and CDD maintenance installed. How's that being over now? It's gonna be roughly $500,000, so. Where's that into this budget, is that gonna be a loan?
The way we've done these larger projects before is with, we have where are we? It's at the bottom of one of the sections, reserve, right, yeah, reserve.
Specifically where we put it. Right now you've got $280,000. When you don't have a project that you want to put in that line, we typically make, that's your contribution to your reserve account. If you have a project like David's, let's just say, if y'all want to do, let's just say you need 500,000 in there, I can tell you what that looks like.
Well, so by doing that, you would say, what would that look like to completely pay for that entire project in this immediate upcoming budget year? Where we knew this was coming, I'd say 1.5 years, 2 years ago. So when we set the number for 280 last year, that was in anticipation of this project
Right.
coming up. So, I mean, I'm not saying that we didn't dip into reserves for anything else over the course of the year, but we should already have, I mean, we already started growing our reserves in anticipation of that in previous years. So
We started talking about when I was here, okay, in 23, I think is when we started, really putting money into, the reserve bucket. if you will. Actually, maybe not, it was actually 24 with the high number, we budgeted 412,000 that year. And that was to go in anticipation as part of this project. At that point, you still didn't know where the location was gonna be.
Yeah.
What you were looking at, what you were gonna do. There were like three at that point, locations that were thrown out. And then all of a sudden, the golf maintenance building came into play. So you have been putting money in there, like I said, in 24, you put 412. So. you
Part of
have
that was
been
the
putting-
alleyway repaving too. which is
Yeah.
Part of the reason for the big increases.
Yeah. you
What's the
did
final
some
number
numbers.
of our reserve number balance? Okay,
It was 800,000.
maybe it's
In the
this guy over here.
Oh, I thought we hit eight. Oh, okay.
I think when they do the rest of the alleys, it's 8, it was
Yeah,
8 some.
but I was here for that other one. I thought we hit 8, but I'm glad to know I've exaggerated it.
Whose
So
phone is it?
if you were to
Oh.
put 500,000,
That phone is ringing.
in your budget But again, remember, that's assessing your residents for this entire project,
Right.
which you wouldn't want to do,
Right.
in my opinion. But if you were to do that, I mean, now you're jumping up to 21.4% increase.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody's
Well,
wanting to.
Angel, what's the final number on the bottom line for our reserves? What
Yeah,
number are we
I
looking at there?
Yeah.
I can tell you.
Is it the 11195 or?
Nuance, what's the reserve, but also through the course of the year and with collecting revenue mostly from people's property tax payments. How, and leaving it, literally reserved for, unexpected, major, like emergency type of expenditures. Realistically, what is the lowest that we want to see that reserve get through the course of the budget year, and where does it sit right now? So we have a good sense of what reserve we have that is available for us to safely pull from for the maintenance building.
Yeah.
Well, we have the money in the money market too, that I think was,
So
available funds.
in your actual reserve account, you've got $421,054 as of April 30th. So, that's what you have. What Joe's referring to is you've got 712,557 in your checking account as of April 30th. You also have 1,316,725 in your money market account.
And what is that allocated for?
That's your general fund.
Oh,
That's, you
okay.
have to take out of that how much, your bills every month, right? And then you also have 3 months of operating.
Okay, see, and that's what I thought, and I was talking to someone about it, and they said, no, that's your money doesn't spend, and I don't
No,
think so.
But what happens is
Yeah.
typically you will not get, everybody doesn't pay their tax bills all at
Right,
the same time.
right.
So you typically give yourself a few months. So we do 3 months of operating reserves that we hold on to. So you can still pay your bills while you're waiting for people to pay.
For the rest of the payments to come in,
Yeah.
yeah.
Their
Okay.
taxes. That becomes flush, right? Once people start paying it in, you get that money back, but that's
Yeah.
what you do. So obviously you can still pay vendors and whatever needs to be done, work doesn't stop.
But did we transfer money into the reserve fund then last year? Because in years gone by, we've taken money and then specifically put it into that line item.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still a big bucket of money, but
I think you had, if you remember when I opened your reserve account a couple of years ago, you had $1 billion plus in there, right? Now you've done the alleyway paving, which was almost 700,000. And there might have been some couple of other things that I'm not aware of that used reserves for, I don't know. I know that particular project came out of that money that was put into reserves initially. And, if you remember previously,
that line was never $1 million though. That one that says reserve fund, we just said it's 421,000 now.
right, because instead of transferring it, you used it for that.
Okay, all right.
So it wasn't physically put into your reserves to set, you had anticipated using those funds, so that's what it was. used for.
Okay,
And if you look prior to that, you weren't really making any contributions to your reserve fund. It was basically the board had been really good at keeping under budget. So anything that you were under budget, whether it was $5 or 50,000, that would roll into a reserve. So that's really kind of how you built it up. And then you had a lot in your general fund. And that's when Teresa, I think Lucas was on the board, Dan, Joe might have been as well, where we took that money and wanted to open a separate reserve account and put that $1 million in there, and then the alleyway hit you. So
yeah,
that's why you're left with 421 right now.
all
Personally.
right. Not nearly enough for everything we have
Well,
coming at us.
No, hold on, that's, you're saying, but you're saying that's reserve as in that is clear, that's like what is clear of what's needed for the operating and for the 3 months, so that's 400.
Yep.
So
Totally.
between 400 something that's in there now and adding what's penciled in right now would be adding 280 for the coming year. I know it's 1:15. We have another meeting starting in 45 minutes, so we have some limit on our discussion.
So this will add to it, Dan. Whatever you pencil in that line, that will add to that 420.
That'll go in at the end of the fiscal year.
I'm sorry.
That'll go in at the end of the fiscal year.
No, it adds in, make that transfer as soon as you start getting tax money.
Okay, that's what we get,
We'll make
okay.
That transfer, in whatever you pencil in right now, it's 280. We'll make
So
that
for,
Well, and so the important question first for David, what would the spend profile to your estimation be for that project? It's not gonna be a check for 500,000 all at once. How long is it gonna be and what's the ramp look like?
So this current fiscal year. Design, permitting, plan should be done by the town clerk. Come 10/1, we're gonna have a flash of bid. That chunk of $500,000 I told you, what hits. Your next fiscal year.
So the 500, that's, I'm not sure I phrased my question right. So the planning permitting stuff, that is, I mean, that's already, you got,
6 months ago, whatever.
right, okay.
I'd
And
say 500,000, man, for those who weren't here, it started a couple years ago. When we did the cost estimate, May of 2023, it was 350. But we're seeing the construction days coming in exponential the last couple of years with everything that's going on. So I'm rounding it out for planning purposes.
This is on 5 Oaks, right?
Um,
And just for those of us who weren't here. I know it's a maintenance facility. Okay,
well, actually, if you're searching for words, I actually had a question related to that. For field services, specifically with them here, and there's another budget, there's some other budget line items that are maybe in here for field services, and we haven't really had spoken on. We have 15,000 a year outlaid for vehicles. Could I get an update on, and none of that's been spent so far this year. What is that something that it needs to be a new truck every 3 years? What's the basis for that? And how have we been performing against that? Is that a realistic number on the field services?
Yeah, that line item would be associated with the field truck, you know, the currently needs to. Yeah, so we haven't touched that, I believe, in the last 2 or 3 years, so. We've been adding that to the certain decision, so that's the level of comfort. I mean, wouldn't have to do that based on maintenance that we're doing on the truck now. But that will also up this renewal as well, you know, additional vehicles for that, so.
Right. So, and the other, I guess, related question, and hopefully this is kind of piggybacking on what you were trying to get at, Brittany, was, so right now we don't have any kind of maintenance facility. We have like the space in the Ashley Park pool area where we have some storage. We have some storage kind of sort of back where we had the trailer previously. What is the impact to field services of not having an actual proper place for storage, personnel, signing out, storing equipment, break space? What's the impact of that? How is it hurt? How was the impact of not having a facility on the field services you guys are providing for us?
That is detrimental, to having, a designated space. I mean, you have the storage back there, which is great. But having a designated facility like that is beneficial, not only to the itself, but also the maintenance facility and the longevity, figure out the house, if we have our shitty truck, the district's truck, that can be housed and down, if it's cut, and it will protect anything. So it would be beneficial, but then it's like a something more after you want to the program facility for that. Because you could make a mixed use with rubber shoe, that's where you get it, but potentially, I don't know, retail.
that's something that I had brought up when we spoke.
I think the issue there maybe is the plot of land that we selected is fairly small. Like there's room for a small building and the minimum required parking spaces for that, whatever water catchment is required for the acreage that we're building on. And I know David had some, I guess, preliminary blueprints, but it's okay.
We have a leads or storing things on the cover. We have an office building. We also have restrooms and storage areas. Everything consolidated into one location versus everything spread throughout here.
Right. I mean, nothing compared to what we had maybe been talking about if there had been a larger building like the golf maintenance facility. That's that was definitely something that would have been considered for that. But I'm not sure. We're talking about, we had a trailer where they're able to come and go and store inside kind of equipment. stage things, not have to be bringing things in from either other Infomart properties or whatever. So it's something we do need. I'm not sure if, yeah, I was just trying to, get from field services, I like. And I understand that it's a detriment not having it. I'm looking for, I guess, maybe, I think I've said all I needed to on that. If you can't give, more specific examples, I guess, of like what the hardship is of needing to bring in stuff or not having a place to stage stuff, that would be, I think, helpful for us to consider for the field services budget, which was going up, I guess, on wanting to increase staffing. So,
As far as place the field services, I mean, that's obviously the board's decision. Wherever you put field services, they'll make do with where you put them as far as a board, whether that's in Ashley Park, whether it's a new facility with, I mean, I think we'll work within the means that the board provides as far as field services. I think a separate conversation and aside from the facility would be, I know we've been talking about here for years of adding staff. We've always only ever had 5. It was way before even Infomart took it, when you were managing the staff yourself. Steve was, I think it was Steve.
Yeah.
That it was always 5 people. I mean, Harmony alone has, I don't know, 80 dog stations.
70,
75.
70.
Oh, I thought it was
So,
83. I always
Yeah, I
exaggerate.
don't remember the 80 number. That's like the 9th time you've said 80 something. So there's a lot that goes on in Harmony itself. I mean, Celebration, which is still a little bit bigger here, but Harmony's pretty big. I have 20 on-site people there. That's all they do is maintenance. And we're adding to that staff as well. Because I think over the years, expectations change, board expectations change, your community expectations change. So that's what that number is. And if not, then, that number could be reduced, but that has no bearing on the facility that the board decides to
Are we having an issue
facilitate.
storing our items, where we do? Back on the Garden Road? No, I meant with the county.
Are you
Not to my-
storing your stuff back on Garden Road?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Basically, it's just, it's not that we have. But actually, we gotta buy more tools, trainings.
No, she means like in sense of like, with the county, if we'd be in trouble with posting it, keeping it there. And no, I don't think
So
so.
why did we have to move our, so why did we move out of there?
It was the storage one they called.
It was.
Yes, but we also.
So from what I understand,
We get,
Yeah.
let's,
David,
David,
answer.
yeah, sorry.
you guys wanted to make that our storage area official. And they keep making it, make it better. So when we went to the county, they wanted fire access for emergency, which led to paving Garden Road wider over 2 big huge gas tanks. The gas company went out of allowed. So we got it combined with Dawson County's fire services for first responders. If they didn't have a proper access to get back there, then we weren't gonna get the permits. That's how the whole thing started with. We'll go to lakefronts, the golf course facility. We had the 2 different scenarios, the piece of land we're working with now. So it's.
So was it because we had the trailer there for the guys with the office in it?
We had
Is,
trouble there.
was that the issue with the county though, or
That
the,
was never a program.
oh, it was
Yeah.
never permanent to
Just kinda
begin with?
that-
Right.
We just did it, okay.
Real briefly, originally, on the road to the golf maintenance facility, there's a little pull off, and that's where the original CDD trailer location was. And I assume that was, that was like 20-something years ago, when that went in there. It was when the golf and the other sections of Harmony were split off to different developers. That's when maybe the property changed hands, and the CDD at some point fell out of the good graces of one of those developers that now owned that property where the CDD trailer had been. So at the time, and this previous, I think, completely five different people on the board, decided to use the CDD property that was on that, the access to where the garden is and where the RV storage lot had been, and moved the trailer there. And it was, like David said, it was when they went to expand it, and, that they county became aware and never said it was impossible, but we had the, load bearing requirements. They needed a hammerhead to be able to turn around. It was going to be at the time, $200,000 plus project. And, this, 3 years ago. So probably a, $300,000 or maybe $400,000 project for it to be done now. Just speaking for myself, my position had been, they're going to be building a neighborhood there at some point. That would be a much shorter, if the roads work out, that would be a much shorter way to access that. Maybe that's when I'm sorry, and I apologize, that's
And
completely
that wouldn't be
outside.
over the gas line.
Right,
so
but that's,
okay,
I
yeah.
know, but that's outside the scope of.
Well, it's helping us understand what we need to do here with these numbers. so,
Yeah, so if at the end, the point of all that was, why do we need it, right?
Right.
Like, there's a kind of status quo that we have now. That's what I was trying to get from field services of like, if we have
We're
some storage
managing.
area back there, it's not a building. We're not being noticed by the county that we're in violation of what's back there. I don't know, that's just because they haven't been back there to look.
Right.
Recently. Make sure that and we've been rolling in this direction for several years now. I'm trying to bolster the case for doing that from field services of like, what is the hardship of needing to bring everything in versus having a place where stuff can be staged and stored and secured? Is it tools wear out faster because they're stored in an unair conditioned trailer?
Exactly that. I mean, if you have a house and you rethink, it's like, and the conditions, you're gonna prolong the life of something. And so that different places they part of that. Now, as far as the previous conversations, previous boards, I don't know what their reasoning was. But so we're going to get on that right now. And so that would definitely be able to, we can store stuff that's other, we contains themselves. They're falling apart as well. I mean, you've got the heat associated with that. Like you say, it's not going to really have anyone to lose. We have schools that we have an office on the other side. We have storage over that road. And we can do it with what we have to work on. So a facility will be must because if it goes out in complications, then obviously key to this decision. I can't speak to the pilots, but honestly to the future.
Yes.
Having something like that, for instance, would bring the asset as well to the district. Now, if our building it, the location it was, is at the moment that you've gone down, is too much. It's a very, it's a small footprint. Yeah, that's efficient. Yeah. And so what the plus, like they were saying, what the plus associated that look like, that they're probably flat so much that you deal with the increase in materials. So and still work with that space and still will get efficient to the maintenance.
So yeah.
In the future, not now, and in the future, and as probably community. We bring an aging, and over time that changes. And like I said before, expectations change. So it's in conjunction with the maintenance facility, also looking at the field stuff. What does that look like? Budget, and whether that's part-time, full-time,
So, and we have in the budget an increase on field services. I get directly related to increased staffing. Is the need for that at all related to not having a location, needing to shuttle things around more possibly or bring things in?
Relation there, I think that's a bit, definitely are separate matters. And the need to bring more people, we're going to need to person to bring what the budget things is what we see right now. Right. You have that.
Right.
Something real quick though, but so the golf people use that building right now, where are they gonna put all their stuff in? If we buy it, who's it farming, that's where they can put all their,
Well, I mean,
right?
They've already sold that.
It's already sold to the community.
yeah.
Yeah, that's the most.
Yeah.
Hoping we could, I was hoping we could talk the county into letting us use a little corner in the back.
So is the golf shoulder in
They
I-
built a new thing over on the golf course.
At the time, we were told, that, yeah, they were gonna build some new thing. I mean, that's not really our, concern.
Mosquito control. Yeah.
Okay, so,
Anyway.
we're at the 5:30 now. We want to have, some time, to reset and everything, before the meeting, starts.
Just quick,
Yeah,
quick comment on the building facility. Like I was under the impression that we had to build that, or we were gonna get violations and we were gonna get fined monthly or daily. So if that's not the case, and we're surviving with what we have for now, I don't see a reason to push that forward.
Yeah.
David?
Did he hear you?
Yeah.
Right now. But then we went through the application, we weren't getting anywhere, so when we got out of their meeting, they got out of there, we were having all this, no, we shouldn't have.
Right, so the violation letters that we were getting was for having an occupied
Office?
temporary building back there that was not permitted.
We're conducting business on it.
Okay, right, and so we
Or you,
satisfied that by no longer having a staffed building or an occupied building back there. Are we at risk of, we went through this whole deal with the county, whatever, however many years ago, and we're given some reprieve, I know, at some point for saying, hey, we're in the process of relocating a facility, replacing that facility with something that is by the books, permitted and all that. It's,
Told that you're,
right,
I know that sunset, they said, all right, what's going on? But they haven't come back and said, well, I have been designing and we're gonna build a maintenance facility. That's in piece that, but.
Right. Okay, so we were given relief on the fines on the basis of us, saying and actually going through the process, filing with the county paperwork to build a permanent maintenance facility. So were we to stop doing that, and again, I mean, council's in here, David, you're the one that, dealt with the county most, that's a risk, right?
I just interject here. So
Yes.
we currently use that now strictly to store. And that's a storage of district owned.
Right, it's district property.
That's all we use. Just on another seat is that a full maintenance facility. We currently use the Ashland pool, there's a little, remodeling that to multiple office.
Right,
It's more beneficial currently for what we need. Okay, as far as permitting of storage down back there, I mean, I would pull from district. We're not doing anything wrong.
Oh, okay.
I could be wrong either.
Oh, I just didn't understand how that worked. Well, that's good. So what we have here
Shed
then
back there, right?
is the budget
Bird shed.
increase
No?
oh,
is
yes,
$200,000, right? From 961 to 1,000,000. The total, the overall budget.
Yes.
So 100,000 of that is the security thing that we may or may not, have that much. And then,
Then you have some others that equal.
but
The
little
larger
dibs and
ones.
dabs here. So we're really not increasing anything by that much. And 280,000 of it is for the reserve.
That is correct.
So, we can go through those because we still can take things out and lower it.
Okay.
But I'm kind of the opinion right now, because we don't know the amount for the security cameras. And we also owe the invasive species. I mean, if we maybe could find out the plant thing, we might not need that for
You
fiscal
got
year
that.
26.
So, 215,000 budgeted. I think you have 3 proposals, 2 proposals in your budget, so that also could change that number.
Well, that number's gonna go up.
So what we have currently is 329,284 increase. Out of that 329, 380. If you look,
Oh, I was looking at the
yeah.
number down here.
You're looking at the.
Right, I went to the very bottom.
It's okay.
When your eyes get old, you'll understand.
So, let's see, are y'all wanting to, any interest to offset your assessments? We typically use about, y'all have used 30,000 in the past.
What was that?
You usually use some interest that you'll get off of your money market account, your reserve account. You get a little bit of interest. You've used it in the past to kind of offset your revenues.
Okay, I have to go, I just need to understand this so that my brain can move forward.
Sure.
Because we're going off of basically these numbers to go for our projections for next year. You don't like the word projections, but like, right, off of this, the fund balance, we're literally going off of the numbers here, right? So something like under administration, rental meeting room. Budgeted was 7,500. We've only spent 2,325, mostly because I'm sure this meeting space costs less than what we had last year. So I'm sure that makes up the difference, right? But then it says here that we're projected to spend $5,175 through the end of the year. And that's obviously because all we did here was subtract what we've actually spent from what we spent last year. So I'm still failing to see where the trends reflect, because all we did, from what I'm seeing here, all you did was subtract what we spent so far from what we spent last year. And then I guess, like, I thought Dan was gonna touch on it earlier, but the same goes for under O&M, the 15,000 for vehicle equipment, the 10,000 for equipment boats, right? We have 15,000, we've spent 0, yet we're projecting that we're gonna spend that exact 10,000, that exact 15,000. What are those based off of, other than what we spent last year?
It's not based off of what you spent last year. It's, which one did you just say? Boats,
Vehicles,
equipment and boats?
Equipment,
So you
boats,
budgeted 10,000, you've spent nothing. They're projecting you're gonna spend 10,000, which is to budget, which I explained early on that we had it set to budget as opposed to actuals. That's why you're seeing that. You've spent nothing in there.
I know, so then how could we be based on what, those $10,000? Because it's just based on the budget that's set. It's not based on any current trends. So let's say we don't spend those $10,000. Let's say we don't spend those $15,000. That's right there, just in those two lines, 25,000, or maybe just, less than that. That would make a difference in the bottom line numbers. So
It's your decision to make. That's
But-
why I'm here today.
And real quick, with both of those are not things that we expect to spend that every single year. We don't buy a new boat or replace our.
right, exactly.
So, and there's not a way for this to accurately show this is year 3 of a 4-year spend to replace our CDD pickup truck every 5 years or whatever works out. So this isn't really
So historically, just so you know, I get what you're saying, and it's frustrating to people who look at this. And even, I will tell you, I have accountants or CPAs on there too, that will go, numbers are numbers, like it doesn't make sense, right? But the way that CDDs work is you fund your budget through your residents, right? Through each one of you. You have to pay, that's what funds this. So if you don't budget for a boat, a truck, or whatever, every year, which is why you see some of these line items that are in there that maybe anything's been spent, y'all haven't pulled the trigger on buying a new vehicle. If you take it out of the budget, which you absolutely can, then next year, if you decide you're gonna buy one, you gotta put it back in the budget. So that's why, if the board wants it taken out, you can absolutely take it out.
I don't
That's
think
why it's in
we're
there.
on the same page. So I'm gonna make one more example and then I'll be done here. I'm gonna go back to the meeting room. The fact that the 2025 adopted budget was 7,500 is because of what the meeting room cost last year. This year it costs less, which is why we've spent less than halfway through the fiscal. Yet the total projection says $5,175. We're not gonna spend that much. And
Spent $4,689 through the end of 25. That's what you're projected to spend because it's a set cost every month. Am I right? Is this a set cost?
that's not
every
the
month?
question. That's not the question that I'm asking. What
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand is you said these numbers are based on trends, but they're not. All you did was literally subtract what we've spent from, And if there would have been any thought put into this, then we would have at least accounted for the fact that we know the meeting room costs less now. We would have at least accounted for that.
We did. That's why your budget number is 5,000, not 7,500. Because we did look at trend of spending. We did account for the meeting cost every month. That's why you see a number in fiscal year 26 of $5,000, not 7,500.
Yes, I see that, but also the point is that for the budget variance, it's all it was simple subtraction.
No, it's not. This workbook is formula driven. There's formulas in here that come out. I've tried to explain that to you. What you as a board should focus on is your actuals, right? And what we're putting in your 26. We're telling you how we came up with those numbers. That's all we can do. If the board wants to go a different direction, you absolutely can do that. But that's what I'm telling you. There's no thought. There absolutely was thought going into this. We know your meeting room, how much it costs. That's why it went from 7,500 to 5,000. Because you're not going to spend 7,500 next year, right? The cost of this meeting room is cheaper than, was it Nature Ranch?
Yep.
That's the point that I just made, so I understand. That's literally what I just said. Again, I'm just not understanding why the actual percentages don't reflect the difference.
We have, well, right, there's this column for the actual, everyone understands what that means. Projected April through the end of the year, that's forward looking.
Yeah.
That's based on what you said before, just a simple extrapolation of we spent this much in the first 6 months. Or 5.5 months or whatever.
That's right.
So then that next column, total projected fiscal 25. That's not, that's.
What's that?
It's a conservative approach
That's right.
to getting your budget to what you should expect, and if you do incur those costs. So if you take all those
Oh,
away,
and-
hold on, let me finish my point. If you take all those away and you actually do the math and you subtract of what you actually spent to date versus what you plan to expect, you're going to get variances on that column, right? The math is what you just said. You subtract what you budgeted for versus your actuals, and that's what you get at the end, right? But you don't budget that way.
I
You have to budget conservatively, and if you do spend that money, then you have it to spend, and then that's how the budget is allocated for the next year.
Yeah, no, I get all that. That's not, again, I don't think that's my point, but we're obviously not getting anywhere.
All right, so
Well, like if it helps on the vehicle, we're setting aside $15,000 a year. So when it's time to buy one, so
And-
we
I
put
get
it in the
that. Yeah, yeah.
budget to break it down.
And if we don't
so
spend that
we-
money, it goes into our reserves.
So it doesn't need.
So we're not
no,
losing money.
Because we can't.
It's
track
not a
it.
matter of that we're losing money. It's a matter of that we're going off of these. And fine, at the end of the day, if we don't need to buy a vehicle, it's just going into a fund that's ours, right? But we're working off of these numbers on whether or not we're applying increases here to the residents. And they might not even be necessary. And my whole point is that I feel like if this was a little bit more thought out, then the numbers would be closer to where,
They are,
They
and I
make sense.
stand by the numbers that are in the 26.
well, then I guess we will disagree.
Absolutely.
well, okay, so what we need to decide is we have I think I mean. That's criticism of how the things are presented on here, and I agree, there's some, potentially very useful information that could have been added to help us make our decisions.
Which is that not the job of the management company to give us that information so that we could make decisions as a board?
Okay, so let me interrupt for a second. Most of you have been sitting on this board for multiple years.
You've made
Right.
that point a lot of times, Angel, and I'm gonna ask you to please stop patronizing me publicly, okay?
Can we-
have Presented this budget in this format
Yep.
for years, okay? This was long before I ever got here. This was the budget format that whichever board decided to go with. It's not up to me. It's not up to Joseph. We work for the board. If you make that directive, as I stated earlier, like Joe wanted to see asterisks near, set costs, happy to do that. We can change this whole format. We can add lines, we can add what you're talking about, what Dan's talking about, we can add all of that. But this is how it's been done for years. This is what the board, whether it was anybody here or previous, this is what they wanted to see. So if you want to see something else, I have no problem. We can adjust it however you want. We can add as many columns as you want. We can add lines. We can add anything that you want. But this as how it's been requested of us for years. That's why it's like this.
One thing I'll say real quick, I think it was 2 years ago, we, when we started adding a second budget workshop, we had, and I'm sorry for, picking on Joseph, we had a lot more time spent on that first workshop with the spreadsheet, with actually being able to look at actuals projected previous years. Maybe that's what I'm remembering, having seen those previous years in, making the decision. I guess so. Absolutely, we have improvements we need to make with what's shown here, and if it's that Excel in the, in the first budget workshop, that I like that.
Yeah, it's super easy to add in whatever you all want.
Okay, but it's quarter till right now, and we have, I think a pretty, some kind of big hanging, decisions. Howard, I'd like to hear a little more what you said about remodeling versus like what.
I was just providing another option there, go down the main coast, still, still that one. A simple remodel of the ancient pool where, team basically houses themselves and works it out of is, obviously a very inexpensive.
So what I'm getting from field services is that having that, that portion of the building in Ashley Park is sufficient for our needs, that we, yes, maybe there's benefit of having a permanent storage facility, but is it a $500,000 benefit?
Is it a want or a need? I mean,
Right.
that is a want. I mean, what we have now.
The need was we could not have a facility back there at the time, which we had, and we've cleared out of, and we've come into this kind of status quo of we are operating out of Ashley Park. I don't know how the parking situation is there, where our vehicle is stored, what kind of equipment would be stored in an outdoor storage area that would be sheltered versus in a container. What you're telling me is kind of pointing toward, we don't need that facility built.
Well, I mean, it's one of those things as you grow, having a facility like that is deeply beneficial to the district.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
I agree and I understand. And I'll also say that we've already spent money going down that path, like five digits, spend money on hiring because we don't want our district engineer to be burdened with all that. It was like, the permitting process and all that, that's like 60 something we'd already spent on that. David, is that correct?
Yeah, I think it was 67,000.
I mean, what we have now.
No break.
What is the full limit? Huge improvements. Is it what it's not?
And the minutes that we have. That's sort of those.
The idea is the things it was a fresh one. It's the sidewalks. Sorry, not that house.
You need spaces. So
Yes.
and the containers themselves, they're watertight now, but they will be.
Okay. So, our decision, and we have 12 minutes before our formal meeting is supposed to start, where we adopt and basically need to adopt, or like we would have to schedule an additional kind of follow-up meeting at cost of, it costs money to have an additional meeting scheduled to, if we need to tweak this more, versus what we have to do is set a ceiling that we can claw back from. And also the ceiling is just the dollar amount.
Right.
Things can be shuffled from within line items on here. So if we look at and decide that, hey, we don't want to do security, weeds, reserve. Those are the three big things that are, I'd say that's what we.
I think something else to think about is if it's beneficial because to Brittany's point, to be able, management to come here and present what needs to be presented to you all, to be able to make an intelligent decision and really look and see. We can go back, take the feedback of what you all want to see in this, whether it's 2 more years of actuals, whatever that looks like. We could add it in there, but you would need to schedule a meeting before June 14th. So then that's your deadline for you to adopt your proposed budget. So over the next week, 2 weeks, I would say you need to schedule a meeting, and we can absolutely do that and put in the numbers and things, the additional columns, actuals, whatever it is that you would like to see in it. And we can absolutely do that.
Can we I know we can't raise the budget. Can we reduce one line item though and raise another? Or,
Just the bottom line.
The
If
bottom
you
line,
approve
that's what I
$5
assumed,
today,
but yeah.
You can move money all over
Okay.
within the budget, but you can't go above $5. You can only go below.
I assumed that, but I just wanted to clarify.
Okay.
I mean, or we could just adopt this budget and refine it at the next meeting with the updated.
Well, no, the next meeting is end of June, is past the deadline, so.
Yeah,
Well, we
you
can
need to reschedule for the beginning of June. Before the.
But we can
14th.
refine the,
Well, okay, yeah. I see what you're saying. Yes, the number that we decide on could be,
lowered.
yes, based on the, maybe just at, another look with the feedback that we've given on the existing numbers.
What you can do is if you set your ceiling tonight in your next meeting, you set in time, unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but letters will go out to all property owners based off of that number. But you can add it to your next month's agenda, the month after, and you can kind of carve stuff out before you get to that final adoption.
Right, so we have until, then again, the August meeting, so end of
Correct.
August is when that has to be ratified, and that will be the final number that will.
What was our last year's increase?
3.1%, I think.
Right.
Then before, the years before that, you had some.
And what is the
Substantial.
I think it was 13.
So, I mean, this is a workshop. We don't make any actual decisions within this, workshop that we're wrapping up. What is, the five of us are the ones that make the decision. So how are we feeling on, is there stuff that we're just ready to axe out of there right now and not even consider having in part of that higher ceiling?
Oh, yeah.
Like,
Well, what's it- I would like-
13.2.
Hey, can we have a quiet, please? We're trying to have a meeting, please. Meetings in progress. Thank you.
I'd like to know what the security, what all the security, money was going to.
Okay, well,
We're gonna find that out.
I know. So
right,
it's
well,
hard to X that out when we haven't had our meeting yet, so.
Yeah, I
Right.
propose that we take this because by the next meeting, then we'll know about the security and we maybe will know about the invasive species. And we can take that all out of the budget and that would bring our rate, our increase down to about 2%.
Then you need to take into consideration if you're gonna do the maintenance facility or not. That's really the only big
well,
thing.
that's the only big thing that we're talking about right now.
Right.
We, in years going forward, eventually we're going to have to do more, a paving project. We don't know what the next, big maintenance issue will be, the next thing to break down and need to be replaced and not be able to do within.
We need to
the
put
operating
money, we
budget.
need to put money in
Yeah.
savings.
This, the community infrastructure is getting older. We can't just slash out. the
Right.
Contribution.
Slide
We need to have
by
something
without-
in there. But this is a fairly, meaningful conversation we need to have with field services of, are there negative impacts to field service, response time, whatever, of not having a dedicated maintenance facility? And the money we've been setting aside and already spending to go down that path versus, any other larger field service conversation that we're having about staffing and things like that. So,
Well, and we could also even say, well, we're not gonna get another truck for 5 years, so we can take that 15,000 out. So that gives us a little more time to each individually go through and study the exact numbers.
we have 3 more months to
Yeah.
finalize these,
Yeah.
and it can only go down from whatever number we decide to
Yeah.
adopt at our meeting either in 6 minutes from now that starts, or if we do need to schedule another budget workshop, no, there's be an actual formal meeting that we'd have to schedule to convene the board and formally adopt the number before June 14th.
You wanna schedule a special meeting.
How are we feeling about that?
Do we have to have everyone here for that though? Like engineer and attorney and everything?
No.
So it
It would have
wouldn't
to
have
be-
to be on as large a scale as our normal monthly meetings.
It'd have to be management, it'd have to be a quorum of the board, we'd have to have the facility. That is, how realistic is that?
I can
mean,
coordinate it.
I'm
most likely-
here,
I mean, I've got the pastor here. I can find out tonight.
okay,
Can we make a motion to adopt
Well, that's-
this pending
so
details?
this is a workship,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
can't make any kind of, there's no decision.
Until the 6 o'clock meeting.
Right, so that.
Okay.
Within the formal meeting of,
I got you.
deciding to convene a follow-up budget meeting
So-
within the next 2 weeks.
Just so I'm clear, so at the meeting then, we would be voting to essentially adopt this budget, right? That reflects a 13.2% increase, but we could potentially work some of that out, or shave some of that down?
Well, yes, whether that is through, we've given feedback on more information we'd like on the existing budget to help better make that decision.
I think you have two options, Brittany. One is we can add in the stuff that you all wanted into this budget, so you can review it, get it to you, literally, I could have it to you on Monday. If you're not happy with this and you want data to look at, we can do that, get it to you on Monday, schedule a meeting between whatever day that you all are available before the 14th. And you can do it then, or if you go in tonight at your next meeting, at 6 o'clock meeting, and you adopt this budget, then you can pare it down between now and your adoption, which is in August. Those are the two different, scenarios.
Considering the cost involved and are you suggesting that we like reschedule the regular June meeting to then happen in the first portion of the month? So we're not adding a meeting to the calendar, we're just pulling it forward a few weeks.
Or if you just want to reschedule the budget for before June 14th, you can still hold your regular meeting if you just want to talk about the budget. It's up to you. Or you-
I personally feel like we don't have a choice but to do that, so that we're able to make an informed decision. My grievance, if I'm being honest, is really that the first budget workshop we had, we also didn't have the actuals to the year to date, right? So that was almost a waste of time. And then we come today and there's still like really vital information. And you know what? We can disagree on whether that was your or the management company's responsibility to provide that, or this is just the way it's been for so long. But ultimately, I think the role of the management company is to provide this information to guide us so that we could make the decision. So now I personally feel like, again, just like the last meeting, because we were missing a piece, this meeting, we're also missing a lot of pieces. And now we have to go ahead and move the meeting again, is really what I'm feeling. I don't.
So my
think there's
question to you
any
is,
option.
did you look at this before we came?
Of course I did.
Okay, then why didn't you ask for the updated version before we got here?
Listen, if I were to tell you how many times a day I email these folks and how
Okay.
many of them go unanswered,
Okay,
literally unanswered and ignored, that would be a whole nother conversation.
okay.
So it's 2 till the hour. We have this workshop where we cannot make any decisions. But we can kind of close it with a understanding of what we want to do going forward. Honestly, I would not be opposed to, yes, this is a increase that none of us want to do in there, but it's a ceiling that I would be okay passing the ceiling, knowing that we still have a lot more information that we want from our management company on those priors and how these numbers were calculated, and the larger field service and maintenance facility questions that I think have a much larger impact on the final budget and the weeds too. I understand with respect to everyone that's here, I'm prepared to take the flack of that initial letter going out of here's what the proposed budget is. That's an increase.
Yeah,
Knowing fully that we intend to
bring it down.
some or all claw that back, whether it's we don't need as much reserve contribution because we decided that the status quo is okay for field services, or we don't need as much of the invasive maintenance this month or whatever. I'm okay just in the interest of not needing to reschedule and all the hassle related to that. Proceed with this. No, it is not, or understanding that it's a budget that none of the 5 of us actually plan on adopting, but it's setting the ceiling that legally we have to set right now for June 14th. And then we have until August to claw that back.
I think the letter can spell out the numbers that were the big ones that are driving the increase and say that we anticipate being able to remove one of those.
Historically done. Cover letter.
Right. Right.
There might be, legality issues there, but all right, well, we're coming up on 6. We've used all of our time for the workshop. Let's see, go back to our workshop agenda. And that was we do have a supervisor request on the workshop agenda, again, related to just the workshop that we had and not any, is there anything that we haven't discussed that we want to make known in the context of this budget workshop?
No.
Okay, hearing none, I will, do we have to move to adjourn, I
Yeah,
guess?
motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All in
Really?
favor?
Aye.
Okay.
You're right, we are
Yes.
adjourned at 6 o'clock.
Yes, oh.
Yes.
Do you have to leave?
This,
I just-
Yeah, you're good there.
We doing
all right, so,
I'll be allowed to take a minute.
let me, end this meeting here. All right, people on Zoom, I'm ending the meeting.
There's one over
We
here.
will, be reconvening in a few minutes, but we do have a shade session at the beginning of our regular meeting. Unfortunately, which is not open to the public. We tried to,
you guys hear you.
no.
I can't hear you.
Anyone hear me?
Hey, Joseph.
Can anyone hear me? Hello?